In the 23rd century BC, we have the rise of two hymn traditions that emerge both in Sumeria and in Egypt. Now, probably the hymns that we have that are still surviving from the 23rd, 24th century BC aren't the earliest hymns written in Egypt and Sumeria, but they're the oldest that we have. The first, the Egyptian, are from the Book of the Dead. Now, the Book of the Dead, if you watch like mummy movies or sort of horror, sometimes the Egyptian Book of the Dead is sort of seen as this mystical text. You know, if you read the wrong thing, you'll raise the dead. This wasn't, in fact, the case. Scholars have been kind of frustrated with the popular conception for many years now. The Book of the Dead was a series of hymns, prayers, and something that's sometimes translated spells, but it's more basically religious incantations asking the divine to guide the soul of a dead person through their journey through the afterlife. And as I'm sure you know, the Egyptian view of the afterlife was rather complex. There's a journey that the soul has to go on, and this is something that the Egyptians share with many other cultures. So I wanted to read to you from the first hymn in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Now, the Book of the Dead, individual copies were made for individual people, and so my understanding is that most books of the dead that you find from the third millennia BC are kind of individualized for the nobleman, king, pharaoh that they were written for. But many of them have a lot of the same sections in common, even if they're sort of individualized based on the person. So the first hymn that we get in one of our well-preserved copies of the Books of the Dead is a hymn of praise to Ra. A hymn of praise to Ra, when he riseth upon the horizon, and when he setteth in the land of life. Osiris the scribe Ani saith, Homage to thee, O Ra, when thou risest. Thou art adorned by me when thy beauties are before mine eyes, and when thy radiance falleth on my body. Thou goest forth to thy setting in the Sekhet boat with fair winds, and thy heart is glad. The heart of the Matet boat rejoiceth. Thou stridest over the heavens in peace, and all thy foes are cast down. The never-resting stars sing hymns of praise to thee, and the stars which rest, and the stars which never fail glorify thee, as thou sinkest to rest in the horizon of Manu. O thou who art beautiful at morn and at eve, O thou, Lord, who livest and established, O my Lord. So this is a translation that's a prose translation, and so we're not quite getting the lineation that's in the original text. But you can get the sense that we have a scribe who names himself Osiris the scribe Ani saith, and then we have this hymn of praise to Ra as this great deity. And there's these interesting images of the boat that Ra is in. At first, I was a little bit confused, but by the end of that description, I hope you can see that Ra, as the sun god, is sort of sailing from his rising to his setting. And there's this beautiful image. The never-resting stars sing hymns of praise unto thee, and the stars that rest, and the stars which never fail glorify thee as thou sinkest to rest in the horizon of Manu. So what we're seeing is an astronomical phenomenon where the sun rises and sets, but the fixed stars don't move, or don't seem to move. Of course, year by year, the fixed stars move. But there's this Ra is rising and setting, and the stars beyond him are staying stable. It's this wonderful image of cyclical motion and stability. The end of the poem is interesting. It's a little bit personal. The writer says, Shine thou with thy rays of light upon my body day by day, upon me, Osiris the scribe, the teller of the divine offerings of all the gods, the overseer of the granary of the lords of Atbu, the royal scribe in truth who loveth thee, Ani, victorious in peace. So after he gives this hymn of praise to Ra, he says, hey, take care of me. I've got an important job to do. Osiris the scribe, I don't know if Osiris maybe was his first name, Ani was his last. I'm not exactly sure how names are supposed to work here. But he says, look, I'm a teller of divine offerings to the gods, but he's also got this really practical job. He oversees the granary of the Lord of Abtu, which I assume is is an important royal figure or noble figure. He's got big things to do. I have to tell of the gods, and I got to make sure the grain stays stable. So we get, even in these very old hymns that can kind of seem obscure, these very practical concerns. In fact, if we turn to the Sumerian hymns that are written around the same time, sort of late 3rd millennia BC, we get a similar picture, but in Sumerian, our primary writer and scribe of religious hymns is a woman named Enheduanna. And I want to read to you from one of her hymns. This is not to Ra, it's to the Sumerian goddess Inanna. Queen of all given powers, unveiled clear light, unfailing woman wearing brilliance, cherished in heaven and earth, chosen, sanctified in heaven, you grand in your adornments, crowned with your beloved goodness, rightfully you are high priestess. Your hand seize the 7 fixed powers, my queen of fundamental forces, guardian of essential cosmic sources. You lift up the elements, bind them to your hands, gather them in power, press them to your breast. Vicious dragon, you spew, venom poisons the land. Like the storm god you howl, grain wilts on the ground, swollen flood rushing down mountains. You are Inanna, supreme in heaven and earth. So with Ra, we have this prayer for blessings upon both the astronomical phenomena and also, keep our grain safe. Inanna, in the Sumerian record, she has the power to destroy grain if she wants, which would be very bad, right? Famine in the ancient world can wipe out civilizations. And so Inanna, in the words of Enheduanna, who seems to have been a priestess of Inanna, or a priestess of many gods who primarily focuses on Inanna. Inanna seems to be this figure of great power for Enheduanna, and Enheduanna is basically saying, look, you got all the power. Now, it's interesting, if you look at Sumerian mythology, Inanna didn't always have power. She was a rather young goddess at first, and she had to kind of craftily and sometimes by force take more power to herself. But as Enheduanna is praying to her, you get the sense that Inanna has risen to this great height. And Enheduanna gets personal. Later in this, she very famously talks about some of her own problems. She says, I, the high priestess, I, Enheduanna, there I raised the ritual basket, there I sang the shout of joy, but that man cast me among the dead. I am not allowed in my rooms, gloom falls on the day, light turns leaden, shadows close in, dreaded south storm cloaks the sun. He wipes his spit-soaked hand on my honey-sweet mouth, my beautiful image fades under dust. What is happening to my fate? O Suen, what is with this Lugalon? Speak to On, he will free me. Tell him now, he will release me. That woman will dash his face, that Lugalon. The mountains, the biggest floods lie at her feet. The woman is as great as he. She will break the city from him. May her heart grow soft for me. So there's a sense in other writings about this time period that Enheduanna was probably a princess, a daughter of a king, and Lugalon, it seems he was some sort of usurper who had come in and taken the kingdom from Enheduanna. Enheduanna should have been rightfully the ruler or would have been in line for rule. It's a little unclear. But Lugalon is this present tyrannical threat. And so in praising Inanna, she's not just doing her daily religious duty, she's asking for a particular political change to happen. We have this really kind of visceral image of wiping the spit-soaked hand on my honey-sweet mouth. Lugalon's a bad dude. He's intimidating, he's wrong, but Enheduanna as a woman is saying that woman, speaking of the divine woman, Inanna, she can set things right, and she's asking for this aid. So both in Egyptian and in Sumerian poetry, we have these images of these people whose jobs it is to praise, to offer sacrifices maybe, but more importantly, we have this image of those big religious traditions and rituals actually having an impact on their daily lives, whether it's, we've got to keep my grain safe, or maybe even big political military turmoil that the gods are being asked to be involved in. So I hope this gives you a picture of sort of the range of ancient hymnography that we get in both the early Egyptian and early Sumerian worlds. It's pretty easy to find translations of both the Egyptian Book of the Dead and the hymns of Enheduanna. Check them out. They're very interesting reading, and we get a sense of the humanity even from the very distant past. Thanks so much.